The Andronis Cluster outpost perched precariously on the edge of the galaxy, a bastion of cooperation among countless alien species. This cooperation was born not out of goodwill but out of necessity. The planet below was a menace, and its apex predator, a creature called the Harvaan, kept even the most adventurous species in check. The Harvaan was the stuff of legend. Its fur shimmered like polished onyx, its eyes burned with a molten amber hue, and its sheer size made most predators in the galaxy look like house pets. The Harvaan didn't merely kill it, demolished. Rumors swirled that entire colonization efforts had been abandoned after a single encounter. It was a beast to be avoided, feared, and revered from a very safe distance. So naturally, when Corporal Dale Jensen announced his intention to investigate the Harvaan, the station erupted into chaos. "You must be broken in the brain," Zarlak screeched, his green plumage fluffing out in every direction. The Plokan ambassador flailed a feathered arm toward the viewport, where the planet glowed ominously beneath them. "Do you not value your own life?" Dale shrugged as he leaned against the table, crunching on a stick of dehydrated carrot. "I've dealt with big, scary animals before. It's just a matter of figuring out what makes them tick. Snacks usually help." "Snacks," Major Rourke growled. The Melnari towered over Dale, his cracked, stony skin flexing with irritation. "This is not some earthling nuisance like your bears or wolves. The Harvaan is death incarnate. Snacks will only ensure it kills you faster." Dale grinned, tapping the side of his pack. "Never underestimate the power of good food. I've got a plan." His crewmates stared at him as though he'd declared his intention to dive into a star. Zarlak fluttered in dismay, Rourke rumbled with displeasure, and even the usually unflappable Varelian engineers muttered worriedly among themselves. None of it deterred Dale. If anything, their alarm only fueled his curiosity. Within the hour, he was descending to the planet's surface in a battered survey pod, armed with nothing but his pack of Earth snacks and a strange sense of optimism. The Harvaan's territory was as alien as its reputation. The landscape glittered with crystalline forests that hummed with energy. Rivers of liquid light meandered through valleys, casting eerie reflections across the terrain. The air shimmered with particles that seemed to hum at the edge of hearing. Dale followed the signs of the creature. Massive claw marks gouged into boulders, trees splintered as though snapped like twigs, and an unmistakable trail of heavy, deliberate footprints. He found the Harvaan as the sun dipped below the horizon, its immense form silhouetted against the glowing rivers. It was every bit as terrifying as the stories claimed. It towered over the landscape, its fur glinting like obsidian glass, and its eyes pierced through the dim light like twin suns. It growled low, a sound that seemed to vibrate through Dale's bones. "Hey there, big guy," Dale called, keeping his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Brought you something." The Harvaan stepped closer, each massive pawfall sending tremors through the ground. Its claws glinted menacingly as its amber gaze locked onto him. Dale slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of beef jerky. "Smoky, salty, delicious," he said, holding it aloft. "You're gonna love this." The creature stopped, tilting its massive head as it sniffed the air. Its ears flicked forward with curiosity. Dale didn't move, his hand steady as the Harvaan lowered its massive snout to inspect the offering. With a quick snap, the jerky was gone. The Harvaan chewed slowly, its glowing eyes narrowing as it considered the flavor. Dale grinned. "Good, right? Got more where that came from." The beast huffed, a sound somewhere between a growl and a sneeze, and leaned closer. Its breath was hot and smelled faintly of ozone. Dale reached into his pack again, this time producing a handful of crackers slathered with peanut butter. "Try these. A little crunch, a little protein. Perfect for a creature your size." The Harvaan rumbled, sniffing cautiously before lapping the snack from Dale's hand with a surprisingly gentle swipe of its massive tongue. "Well, aren't you a gourmet?" Dale said, chuckling. The Harvaan tilted its head, its glowing eyes now more curious than threatening. It let out a low, resonant sound that Dale could only interpret as approval. Dale spent the next hour feeding the creature an assortment of snacks from his pack, each new offering met with increasing enthusiasm. By the time his supplies were depleted, the Harvaan had settled onto its haunches, towering over him like a furry mountain, but radiating an unmistakable air of contentment. When Dale returned to the station later that evening, the reaction was predictable. Zarlek practically fell off his perch in shock, while Rourke's granite-like jaw dropped in disbelief. "You survived," Rourke finally managed. "Not just survived," Dale said, tossing his empty pack onto the table. "I made a friend." "That is not possible," Zarlek squawked. "The Harvaan does not have friends, it devours everything." "Not if you bring snacks," Dale said with a grin. As if to prove his point, the station shuddered slightly, and the viewport lit up with an amber glow. Everyone turned to see the Harvaan, its massive form crouched just outside the containment field. In its jaws, it carried what appeared to be a crystalline tree, roots and all. It set the tree down delicately near the station entrance before sitting back on its haunches, tail swishing expectantly. "It brought a gift," Zarlek whispered. Dale grabbed another pack of snacks from the supply locker, ignoring the collective groans of his crewmates. "Looks like I've got a dinner guest." He stepped toward the airlock, waving over his shoulder. "Don't wait up." The Harvaan's unexpected gift, a shimmering crystalline tree, as tall as a starship, stood near the outpost's entrance like a monument. Inside, the station's inhabitants buzzed with a mix of disbelief, fear, and reluctant admiration as they watched Dale casually step into the airlock with a pack of snacks slung over his shoulder. Jensen, Zarlek squawked, his feathers trembling with panic. "What are you doing? This is madness. That thing cannot be trusted." Major Rourke grunted in agreement, his stony visage grim. "The fact that you're still breathing is a miracle. Don't push your luck, human. That beast is unpredictable." Dale waved them off as the airlock hissed open, a grin plastered across his face. "Relax. Big guy out there just wants to hang out. Pretty sure he's already figured out I'm the snack guy. Trust me, this'll be fine." The hatch opened, and Dale stepped onto the planet's surface. The Harvaan turned its massive head toward him, amber eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Its tail thumped once, sending a puff of dust into the air. Dale walked closer, stopping a few feet away from the towering creature. "Hey buddy," he said, holding up a pouch of dried apples. "Got something new for you to try. Ever had fruit?" The Harvaan sniffed, huffed, and then lowered its head to accept the treat. It chewed thoughtfully before emitting a deep, resonant rumble that sounded almost like a purr. "You like it, huh?" "Figured you might." Dale sat cross-legged on the ground, the Harvaan looming over him like a living mountain. "You know, you're not so scary once people get to know you." The Harvaan tilted its head, watching him with a curious gaze. Dale took the opportunity to toss the rubber ball from his pack. It bounced once, and the Harvaan's ears perked up. The creature froze, staring at the ball intently before pouncing on it with surprising grace. The sight of the massive beast batting at the ball like a playful puppy would have sent Zarlek into cardiac arrest. "Yeah, that's the spirit," Dale laughed. "Fetch it back here, big guy." To his surprise, the Harvaan did exactly that, gently nudging the ball back toward him with its snout. Dale tossed it again, and the game continued. For a creature that had terrified entire species, the Harvaan seemed downright joyful as it played. Back inside the station, the crew watched the scene unfold on the external monitors. Zarlek was pacing, or rather fluttering back and forth, his feathers puffed in alarm. "He's playing games with it. Games. This is unnatural. That thing is a killer, not a pet." Major Rourke folded his arms, his granite features unreadable. "It's not attacking him," he said slowly. "In fact, it seems content. Almost happy." "Happy?" Zarlek squawked. "That's a predator. It doesn't feel happiness. It feels hunger." One of the Varelian engineers, a slender figure with translucent, glimmering skin, turned from the monitor and spoke in their calm, melodic tone. "Perhaps the Harvaan is not as mindless as we believed. Corporal Jensen may have discovered something we overlooked, a method of communication beyond fear." "Communication," Zarlek hissed. "He's feeding it. It's manipulation, not communication." Rourke grunted. "Whatever it is, it's working. The Harvaan hasn't tried to breach the station, and it hasn't harmed Jensen. That's more than we could have hoped for. Out on the surface, Dale and the Harvaan had settled into an oddly companionable rhythm. The creature now lay on its side, massive paws stretched out in front of it as Dale scratched behind its ears. "See," Dale said, his voice warm. "You're just misunderstood. They've got you pegged as some big bad monster, but all you needed was a little kindness and a lot of snacks." The Harvaan let out a contented rumble, its amber eyes half closed. Dale leaned back, staring up at the stars. "You know, you've got it pretty good down here. Open skies, all this space to roam. Meanwhile, I'm stuck up there with a bunch of aliens who think I've lost my mind. Don't get me wrong, they're great folks, but they don't really get me. Not like you do." The Harvaan's ear twitched, as if it understood. Suddenly, the creature's head shot up, ears swiveling toward the horizon. It let out a low growl, the playful warmth in its demeanor replaced by an alert, protective stance. Dale followed its gaze and saw faint lights flickering in the distance, blue and green, moving in erratic patterns. "What is it?" Dale asked, standing and grabbing his pack. The Harvaan growled again, louder this time, and rose to its full height. The lights grew brighter, closer, and Dale could now make out the shapes of strange, insectoid machines skittering across the crystalline terrain. "Well, that's not good," he muttered. One of the machines emitted a sharp, high-pitched tone, and the Harvaan roared in response, a sound that echoed like thunder across the alien landscape. The machines stopped for a moment, as if recalibrating, and then resumed their advance. Dale rummaged through his pack, finding the flare gun he always carried for emergencies. "All right, big guy," he said, loading it. "Looks like we've got company. You ready to show these clankers who's boss?" The Harvaan growled, its amber eyes blazing with determination. Dale fired the flare, sending a streak of red light arcing across the sky. The machines hesitated, their movements faltering, and the Harvaan seized the moment. With a roar that shook the ground, the beast charged forward, claws tearing through the first wave of insectoid drones like they were made of paper. Dale watched in awe as his unlikely companion fought with unmatched ferocity, each swipe of its claws leaving trails of sparks and shattered metal. "All right, note to self," Dale muttered. "Never underestimate the snack-powered apex predator." The battle between the Harvaan and the insectoid machines was nothing short of breathtaking. Dale watched as the creature's strength and agility turned the skittering drones into scrap metal. It moved with a combination of grace and raw power, each swipe of its claws precise and devastating. Still, the drones kept coming. They advanced in swarms, their spindly legs clicking and their weapons emitting bursts of crackling energy. Dale realized the Harvaan couldn't handle them all alone. "All right," Dale muttered, scrambling for cover behind a crystalline boulder. "Time to get involved." He pulled a small explosive charge from his pack, something standard issue for emergencies, and hurled it into the densest cluster of machines. The explosion lit up the terrain, sending shards of drones flying in every direction. The Harvaan glanced back at him, its glowing eyes momentarily meeting his. Dale grinned and gave it a thumbs up. "Teamwork, buddy," he called. The beast let out a resonant growl that Dale chose to interpret as approval before leaping back into the fray. Despite their combined efforts, the swarm didn't relent. Dale noticed something troubling. The drones seemed to be targeting the Harvaan specifically. They were ignoring him, focusing all their energy weapons and coordinated strikes on the massive beast. "What's your deal?" Dale muttered, squinting at the machines. "Why go after my buddy here?" As if in response, one of the larger drones emitted a harsh, grating tone. It hovered above the battlefield, its segmented body glowing with eerie green light. Dale realized it was directing the swarm, a command unit of some kind. "Well, you're going to be a problem," he said, pulling out his flare gun again. He took aim and fired, but the drone dodged the shot with unnerving speed. The Harvaan roared, clearly as frustrated as Dale. The command drone responded by launching a volley of projectiles, forcing the creature to retreat momentarily. "All right, change of plan," Dale muttered, sprinting toward the Harvaan. He waved his arms to get its attention, then pointed at the command drone. "We've got to take that one out. You distract it, I'll handle the rest." The Harvaan blinked at him, its massive head tilting slightly. Dale wasn't sure if it understood his words, but the beast seemed to grasp his intent. It roared again and charged straight at the hovering drone, dodging incoming fire with surprising agility. With the command drone focused on the Harvaan, Dale seized the opportunity to get closer. He climbed a jagged outcrop of crystal, positioning himself above the fray. From this vantage point, he spotted a weak point in the drone's armor, a small, flickering node near its center. "Bingo," he whispered, pulling another explosive charge from his pack. As the Harvaan lunged at the drone, forcing it to maneuver erratically, Dale hurled the charge with all his strength. It struck the weak point dead on, detonating in a burst of light and sending the drone crashing to the ground. The swarm faltered immediately. Without their commander, the remaining drones scattered, their movements disorganized and aimless. The Harvaan wasted no time, tearing through the stragglers with savage efficiency until the battlefield was silent. Dale climbed down from his perch, his heart pounding. He approached the Harvaan cautiously, unsure how it would react now that the fight was over. "Hey, big guy," he said, holding out his hands. "You all right?" The Harvaan turned to him, its amber eyes glowing softly. It rumbled low in its chest, a sound that was more a purr than a growl, and lowered its massive head toward him. Dale laughed, reaching up to pat the creature's muzzle. "You're a real lifesaver, you know that? We make a good team." The Harvaan chuffed in response, then nudged him gently with its snout. Dale stumbled slightly but grinned. Okay, I get it. You're the muscle, I'm the snacks." Together they began the trek back toward the outpost, the battlefield behind them, littered with the remains of shattered drones. Inside the station, the crew had been watching the entire scene unfold on the monitors. Zarlek was a feathery mess, his green plumage sticking out at odd angles as he paced back and forth. "He's insane," Zarlek muttered. "Completely and utterly insane. He should have been vaporized, or mauled, or both." "Instead, he just saved the station," Major Rourke said, his tone grudgingly respectful. "And he did it with the help of that beast." One of the Varelian engineers leaned forward, their crystalline features shimmering. "Perhaps the Harvaan is not the mindless predator we believed it to be. It demonstrated remarkable intelligence and loyalty." To him, Zarlek squawked, jabbing a feathered wing toward the viewport. "Not to us." "Maybe that's because we've been too busy fearing it," Rourke said. "Jensen saw something we didn't." At that moment, the external hatch opened and Dale strolled into the station. The Harvaan sat just outside, its massive form blocking half the viewport as it waited patiently. "Guess who just saved the day?" Dale said, dropping his pack onto the table. Zarlek threw up his wings in exasperation. "This is madness, absolute madness. You've bonded with a predator, a killer." "Not just a predator," Dale corrected. "A friend." Major Rourke studied him for a moment before nodding. "You've done something no one else dared to try. You turned a threat into an ally. That's impressive." "Thanks," Major Dale said with a grin. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I think my buddy out there deserves a celebratory snack." As Dale headed back toward the airlock, Zarlek collapsed into a flustered heap of feathers. "This is going to end badly," he muttered. "Mark my words." Outside, the Harvaan rumbled softly as Dale approached, a sound that could only be described as contentment. Dale tossed it another handful of jerky, and the creature's massive tail thumped against the ground. "Yeah," Dale said, patting its snout. "I think we're going to be just fine." The station's mood shifted dramatically in the days that followed. The Harvaan had become a fixture outside, its massive form lounging near the entrance, occasionally rising to patrol the perimeter. What had once been a symbol of terror for the station's crew now felt, in some strange way, like a protective presence. Dale spent most of his time with the creature, either feeding it new snacks or engaging in activities that left the crew flabbergasted. He played games of fetch, tested its reactions to various sounds, and even taught it to respond to a sharp whistle. "I've seen warlords bow before the Harvaans might," Zarlek muttered as he watched Dale from the observation deck. "And now it's chasing a rubber ball." This feels like heresy. The real test of the Harvaan's newfound bond with the outpost came unexpectedly. A massive starship appeared on the station's sensors, a sleek, predatory vessel belonging to the Wraithal Collective. The Wraithal were a species infamous for their ruthless scavenging expeditions, targeting isolated outposts and stripping them of resources, leaving destruction in their wake. Major Rourke's stony expression grew grimmer as he read the ship's trajectory. They're headed straight for us. If they think we're vulnerable, they won't hesitate to attack. Zarlek's feathers puffed out. Vulnerable? We are vulnerable. Our defenses are outdated, our comm systems are spotty, and our most dangerous deterrent is now playing house with the human. Dale leaned casually against a console, his easy demeanor unchanged despite the looming threat. First of all, I'd argue our deterrent is better than ever. Second, maybe we don't have to fight them. Rourke turned to him, his granite brows furrowed. What are you suggesting? Simple, Dale said. We give them a reason to think twice about messing with us. Let's show them what we've got. When the Wraithal ship arrived, it loomed over the outpost like a predator sizing up its prey. Communications crackled to life, and a cold, guttural voice filled the station. This is Commander Vren of the Wraithal Collective. Your station is hereby claimed. Surrender your resources or face obliteration. Before anyone could respond, the Harvaan let out a deafening roar that echoed through the outpost and beyond. The Wraithal ship paused, its lights flickering as if recalibrating its sensors. What was that? Vren's voice demanded. Dale grinned, stepping toward the comm console. Oh, that? Just our guard dog. You're welcome to come down and say hello, but I'd think twice if I were you. The Harvaan, as if on cue, rose to its full height outside the station. Its amber eyes glowed fiercely, and it bared its massive teeth in a snarl that could be seen even from orbit. Dale whistled sharply, and the creature let out another thunderous roar, pawing at the ground with enough force to send tremors through the station. The Wraithal ship's scanners picked up the immense energy readings from the Harvaan. Its natural bioelectric field was off the charts, and the raw power in its movement suggested a creature capable of devastating destruction. This is a trick, Vren growled. No single organism could pose a threat to a Wraithal cruiser. Dale smirked, leaning closer to the microphone. Want to find out? I've got plenty of snacks for him, and trust me, you don't want to be what's on the menu. There was a long, tense silence. Then, the Wraithal ship began to pull away, its engines flaring to life. You've been granted mercy, Vren snarled. Pray you never cross the Wraithal again. With that, the ship vanished into the void, leaving the station untouched. The outpost erupted into cheers as the threat dissipated. Zarlek, still trembling, flopped onto a nearby chair. I cannot believe that worked. We bluffed an entire Wraithal cruiser, with snacks and growls. Major Rourke's stony face cracked into a rare smile. The Harvaan isn't just a weapon, it's an ally, and we have Corporal Jensen to thank for that. Dale shrugged, popping a piece of jerky into his mouth. Hey, all it took was a little trust, some patience, and a lot of beef jerky. Big guy out there just needed a chance to prove himself. Outside, the Harvaan rumbled softly, pacing near the entrance. Dale grabbed a fresh pack of snacks and headed toward the airlock, waving over his shoulder. Simon, I've got a buddy to feed. And maybe teach him a few new tricks. Next time someone shows up uninvited, I'm thinking he learns to smile. Zarlek groaned, burying his head in his wings. This station will never be the same. As Dale stepped outside to greet the Harvaan, he couldn't help but smile. What had started as a mission to investigate a fearsome beast had turned into something extraordinary, a friendship that bridged the gap between species, proving that even the galaxy's most terrifying creatures could be tamed with a little understanding. And a lot of snacks. The outpost settled into a strange new rhythm in the days following the Wraithal encounter. The Harvaan, now affectionately dubbed Big Guy by Dale, became both a symbol of protection and a subject of uneasy fascination for the station's inhabitants. No one dared approach the creature except Dale, who seemed to have developed a near telepathic bond with it. Big Guy spent most of his time patrolling the perimeter or lounging in the open space near the outpost, keeping a watchful eye on the surroundings. The crew couldn't decide whether they felt reassured or unnerved by the sight of the enormous beast so close, its glowing eyes always scanning the horizon. Dale, of course, treated the situation as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You should try spending time with him," Dale said one day, tossing Big Guy a jerky strip. "He's not so scary once you get to know him." Zarlek fluffed up in horror. "Spend time with it? I can hardly look at it without envisioning my untimely demise. It could swallow me whole." "Only if you're out of snacks," Dale joked, eliciting a groan from Zarlek. Major Rourke, meanwhile, had taken a more pragmatic approach. "As long as the Harvaan keeps intruders away, it's an asset. But we can't rely on it alone. The Rathol will likely return, and they won't fall for the same bluff twice." Dale nodded. "Fair point. But Big Guy's not just muscle. He's smart. I think we can train him to help in more ways than one." This idea was met with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Dale set to work immediately, spending hours outside with Big Guy, experimenting with commands and games. At first, the crew watched from the safety of the station, their apprehension evident. But as the days passed, curiosity began to outweigh fear. The breakthrough came when Dale managed to teach Big Guy a command to respond to threats. With a simple whistle, the Harvaan would unleash an earth-shaking roar and adopt an aggressive stance that could intimidate even the boldest foe. This could work, Rourke admitted, watching the demonstration from the observation deck. Zarlek, still perched a safe distance away, muttered, "Or it could backfire horribly when it decides we're the threat." "Don't worry," Dale said, overhearing the comment as he re-entered the station. "Big Guy knows who his friends are." The test of this new arrangement came sooner than anyone expected. A small fleet of Rathol scout ships appeared in orbit, clearly probing the station's defenses. Unlike their previous visit, these ships didn't immediately hail the outpost. Instead, they began a systematic sweep of the surrounding area, scanning for weaknesses. "We don't have enough firepower to repel them if they attack," Rourke said, his tone grim. "And if they call for reinforcements, we're finished." Dale cracked his knuckles, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "I've got an idea. It's risky, but if it works, they won't bother us again." Zarlek squawked in alarm. "Why does every human plan begin with the phrase, 'it's risky'? That never ends well." "Relax," Zarlek, Dale said, patting the Plokin on the shoulder. "This one's a sure thing. Mostly." Under the cover of darkness, Dale and Big Guy moved into position outside the station. Dale carried a portable communication device linked to the outpost, allowing him to coordinate with Rourke and the crew. The plan was simple in concept: scare the Rathol scouts so thoroughly that they'd never consider returning. But pulling it off would require precise timing and a lot of faith in Big Guy. The first part of the plan involved Dale triggering a series of controlled explosions around the scout ship's landing zone, creating the illusion of a much larger defensive system. As the explosions lit up the terrain, Big Guy unleashed a roar that echoed across the landscape, his glowing eyes cutting through the darkness like twin beacons of menace. From the station, Rourke's voice came over the comm. "The scouts are hesitating. It's working. Keep it up." Dale gave a thumbs up to Big Guy. "All right, buddy, let's give them the full show." Big Guy charged forward, his massive form a blur of motion against the backdrop of crystalline trees. The ground trembled with each step, and his roars grew louder, more ferocious. The Rathol scouts, unprepared for such a display, began firing wildly, their shots missing by wide margins as panic set in. Dale coordinated from a safe distance, triggering more explosions and feeding commands to Big Guy through whistles and gestures. The result was chaos. The Rathol ships scrambled to retreat, their scanners overwhelmed by the Harvaan's bioelectric field and the calculated destruction surrounding them. Within minutes, the fleet was gone, leaving only the faint glow of their engines in the night sky. When Dale and Big Guy returned to the station, the crew greeted them with a mix of relief and awe. "You did it," Rourke said, clapping Dale on the back. "They won't come back after this." Zarlek, still trembling, added, "I'll admit, I underestimated your peculiar methods, but the Wrathel fled, and we're alive. I suppose that counts as a win." Dale grinned, tossing Big Guy a handful of jerky. "Told you he's more than just a scary face. Big Guy's part of the team now." The Harvaan rumbled softly, lowering itself onto the ground with a satisfied huff. As the station settled into an uneasy peace, Dale found himself reflecting on how far they'd come. What had started as a mission to investigate a terrifying beast had turned into an alliance that none of the crew could have imagined. Big Guy wasn't just a protector. He was a friend, a reminder that even the galaxy's most fearsome creatures could surprise you, given the chance. And Dale had a feeling that their adventures were just beginning.